I still get chills whenever I think about that house. Honestly, part of me just wonders if sharing this will help me finally sleep better, or maybe it'll make it worse. Either way, I need to get this off my chest. Growing up, my brother and I had this weird fascination with old houses. You know, the ones with the peeling wallpaper, the dusty rooms, and the stale smell that hits you the moment that you walk in. We used to sneak into abandoned houses in the old part of the town just to see what was left behind, and I swear those afternoons shaped the rest of our lives. We ended up going all in on this obsession, forming our own little paranormal investigation team, convinced that ghosts weren't just TV gimmicks. I remember that night, the call that changed everything, just like it happened yesterday. It was the beginning of October and cold already, the kind where the wind literally howls outside like a scene straight out of a horror movie. We were at the dining room table with our usual setup, our laptops, case files, leftover pizza. That's when the phone rang. On the other end, there was a woman who sounded terrified. She kept talking about strange noises and moving objects in her house on the edge of town. My heart started pounding because something about her voice just, I don't know, it felt real. More real than anything we'd ever dealt with before. Now, her old Victorian house wasn't exactly a secret. Locals talked about it. Supposedly, it has been haunted with all sorts of creepy legends. If you've ever drove by it, you couldn't miss it. The sagging porch or the shutters rattling in the wind. We loaded up our gear into the van and headed over, half excited, half terrified. It was already dark by the time we got there. The place gave me that feeling, the feeling like the air was heavier, like we were walking into something that we just couldn't walk out of. My brother parked the van and rattled off what the homeowner, Evelyn, had told him about over the phone. Objects moving, cold spots, whispers. The usual, he said, trying to sound unimpressed, but I could see a flicker of excitement in his eyes. I tried to keep my own voice steady as I checked my notes. She'd mentioned not sleeping for weeks. My gut twisted. I couldn't shake that sense that we were messing with something bigger than us. The wind nearly tore the sound of our knock right off the door. When it finally opened, this frail, elderly woman stood there. You could see fear on her face. Her hands trembled as she thanked us for coming, and something about her eyes just made me want to turn around and run back to the safety of the van. But we went in. Inside, the house felt off. That's the only word that I can describe it with. The smell of old books clung to everything, mixed with something else I couldn't quite place. Maybe lavender, maybe something older. Dust covered the furniture like no one had ever touched it in the last couple of decades. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway was so loud in the silence, it made me jump. We set up our equipment as she told us her story. Whispers in the night, things moving on their own. The awful feeling of being watched, even when she was supposedly alone. We split up and started investigating. Temperature drops, weird shadows darting in the corners of our flashlights. It was like the house wanted to show us that it was alive, or something else entirely. In one cramped study, our recorder picked up a quiet whisper, so faint I almost thought I imagined it. But when I replayed it, it clearly said, "Leave." We asked Evelyn if anyone had died in the house, or if there had been any other horrible thing to have happened here. She insisted that she didn't know anything. My brother reassured we'd review everything, then come back with answers. She looked so relieved, but also not at the same time, like she'd been living with this forever. Afterwards, we spent a few days hunched over our dining room table, analyzing every piece of footage. We had temperature readings plummeting for no reason, EMF spikes, faint whispers we couldn't explain. But here's the weird part. Every time Evelyn was supposed to be on camera, like if she was pointing at something moving, she just wasn't in the footage. My brother and I tried to brush it off as some weird camera angle, but I knew it was wrong. It made no sense. So, naturally, of course, we ended up going back. When we pulled up, the old house looked totally different. Fresh paint, no sagging porch, or broken shutters. We thought it was the wrong house, but the address was the same. I didn't want to, but my brother wanted to see it through. When we knocked, a young woman answered, looking at us like we were trying to sell something. I asked for Evelyn, and that's when my entire world flipped upside down. She told us Evelyn had died decades ago. She was her great aunt, the same woman we'd literally just spoken to a week earlier. My brother and I must have looked like we were going insane. We tried to argue and said that we'd just been there, but the new homeowner's expression shifted from annoyance to something sad, like she knew more than she was telling us. We left rattled. Back home, we double-checked the property's records, anything we could find. There it was, plain black and white, an obituary for Evelyn from years ago. I swear my heart stopped for a second. Then, I found an old photograph of the house in its prime. There she was, right in the middle of the picture, along with everyone else, including the staff. The caption below listing the names of the people in the picture confirmed that it was her. Later, I found another clipping. Her death wasn't natural. They didn't spell it out, but it was definitely tragic. We pored over our footage again, searching for answers. The more we looked, the more apparent it became. Evelyn wasn't visible on any video. Not a shadow, not a silhouette, nothing. Anytime we thought we'd caught a glimpse, the frame would just distort, like she was there but also not there. We found that same whisper again. Leave, repeating over and over. Anyway, that's my story. Maybe I'm hoping someone will read this and might have an explanation that'll finally make it a little bit easier to sleep at night. All I know is that if you ever find yourself drawn to an old house and the ghosts of the past, be careful what you wish for. Because sometimes the past is all too eager to talk back. I had always loved the small picturesque town of Miller's Crossing, a place where everyone knew each other and crime was particularly non-existent. So when I inherited my grandmother's old Victorian house on the edge of town, I was thrilled. My grandmother had passed away a few months back, leaving behind this lifetime of memories and this house full of antique furniture and dusty knickknacks. I decided to move in temporarily to sort through her belongings and maybe get a change of scenery. The first few days were uneventful. I spent most of the time just cleaning, organizing, and occasionally chatting with the friendly neighbors who stopped by to offer condolences and share stories about my grandma. It wasn't until the fourth night that things started to get strange. It began with the knocking. I was in bed just about to drift off to sleep when I heard a soft, rhythmic knocking coming from downstairs. At first I thought it was the old house just settling, but the knocks were too deliberate, too patterned. They weren't just random creaks. I got up, grabbed the flashlight I kept on my nightstand, and cautiously made my way downstairs. The knocking continued, echoes through the empty halls. It seemed to be coming from the basement. I hesitated at the top of the basement stairs, the flashlight beam trembling slightly in my hand. I took a deep breath and then descended, one creaky step at a time. When I reached the bottom, the knocking stopped. I swept the flashlight around the basement, illuminating dusty shelves and cobweb-covered furniture. But nothing out of the ordinary. I shrugged it off as just my imagination playing tricks on me and went back to bed. The next morning, I found something odd. In the kitchen, on the small table where my grandma used to have her breakfast, lay an old, leather-bound journal. I didn't remember seeing it before. My curiosity piqued, and I opened it. The journal belonged to my grandmother. It detailed her life of Miller's Crossing. But towards the end, the entries became increasingly erratic and paranoid. She wrote about hearing some strange noises at night, about feeling watched, and about something that she referred to only as the Watcher. The last entry sent chills down my spine. It said, "The Watcher is coming for me. It knocks to warn me, to let me know it's near. I fear my time is running out." That night, the knocking started again. This time it was louder and more insistent. I followed the sound to the basement once more, my heart pounding in my chest. As I reached the bottom step, the flashlight flickered off and died, plunging me into darkness. Panic had set in, and I fumbled for my phone just to use the flashlight. When I finally managed to turn it on, I saw it. A figure stood in the far corner of the basement, barely visible in the dim light. It was tall and thin, its eyes glowing faintly. The knocking resumed, louder and faster, as the figure began to move towards me. I bolted up the stairs, slamming the basement door behind me. I could still hear the knocking, now accompanied by a low guttural growl. I didn't sleep at all that night, my grandmother's words echoing in my mind. The Watcher is coming for me. The next day, I packed up my belongings and left Miller's Crossing, vowing never to return. I don't know that the Watcher was or why it haunted my grandmother's house, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was out there still, somewhere, waiting. After I left Miller's Crossing, I thought I could leave the Watcher behind. I moved back to the city, renting a small apartment and trying to get rid of the past behind me. Life returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be after such an ordeal. But the knocking never truly left. It would come sporadically, always at night, always when I was alone. Months passed and I started to believe it was all in my head. I even started seeing a therapist who assured me that it was just trauma that could manifest in strange ways. I was beginning to feel more at ease, starting to think that maybe, or just maybe, I could move on. Then, one evening, I received a package in the mail. There was no return address, just my name written in a neat, old-fashioned script. I hesitated before opening it, a sense of dread creeping over me. Inside this package was an old photograph of my grandmother standing in front of the house in Miller's Crossing, holding a baby. I recognized the baby as myself. Attached to the photo was a note. "You can't escape. What's in your blood?" I dropped the photo and stepped back, my mind racing. How could somebody know about the Watcher? My grandmother never spoke of it to anyone, and I had kept my own experiences to myself. That night, the knocking returned, louder and more persistent than ever. It seemed to come all around me, echoing through my apartment. I tried to ignore it, to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but the sound was unmistakable. Then came the growling. I couldn't stay in my apartment. Grabbing only my keys and my phone, I fled, driving aimlessly through the city, until I ended up at a 24-hour diner. I sat there, drinking coffee and trying to calm my nerves, until the sun came up. Over the next few days, I researched everything I could about this Watcher. I dug through old town records, folklore, websites, and anything that might have given me a clue. One night, deep in an obscure forum, I found a post from somebody in a neighboring town who described a similar entity. A tall, thin figure that knocked and growled, tormenting their family for generations. Desperate, I contacted the poster, a woman named Evelyn. We met in a small cafe on the outskirts of town. She looked tired, as if she hadn't slept in years. She listened as I recounted my experiences, nodding along as if she heard it all before. "You're not the first," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Watcher is an ancient entity tied to certain bloodlines. Once it finds you, it never truly leaves." "Is there any way to stop it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "There are ways to keep it at bay," she replied. "Symbols, rituals, protection passed down through the generations. But once it's attached to your bloodline, it will always come back." Evelyn showed me a series of protective symbols and explained a ritual that her family used to keep for the Watcher to stay at a safe distance. I thanked her and left, feeling a mixture of hope and fear. That night I performed the ritual and placed the symbols around my apartment. The knocking didn't come, and for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. But peace was fleeting. A week later, I found a new note on my kitchen table. "You can't hide forever." I realized then I couldn't run from the Watcher. It would always find me, no matter where I went or what I did. My only hope was to learn more, to find a way to break this curse that had haunted my family for generations. And so, I returned to Miller Crossing, to the old Victorian house and the secrets it held. I had to face the Watcher head on to uncover the truth that my grandmother had hidden for so long, because if I didn't, I knew I would never be free. Returning to Miller's Crossing felt like stepping back into a nightmare. The old Victorian house loomed ominously at the end of the street, its windows dark and lifeless. I parked my car and stared at it for a long moment, summoning the courage to go inside. The protective symbols and rituals Evelyn had taught me were my only defense against the Watcher, and I clung to them like a lifeline. The house smelled of dust and decay, as if it had been abandoned for years rather than months. I made my way to the basement, the air growing colder with each step. The door creaked as I opened it, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The basement was just as I left it, filled with old furniture and boxes of my grandmother's belongings. I set up candles around the room, placing the protective symbols in the circle. I began the ritual, chanting the words Evelyn had taught me. The air grew heavy, and I felt a presence watching me from the shadows. The knocking started again, but this time, it was different, more insistent, more demanding. As I finished the ritual, the candles flickered and went out. The room plunged into darkness, and I heard the growling, closer than ever before. My flashlight flickered to life, and I saw it. The Watcher, standing at the edge of the circle. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its form seemed to shift and waver. "You cannot banish me," it hissed, its voice echoing in my mind. "I am bound to your blood. I will always find you." Summoning all my courage, I stepped forward, holding out the symbol. "What do you want?" I demanded. The Watcher paused, as if considering my question. "You carry a curse, passed down through your family. Your grandmother tried to hide it, but she failed. The curse is tied to this house, to the land it stands on. To break it, you must understand its origin." With that, the figure had vanished, leaving me alone in the dark. I knew what I had to do. I spent the next few days combing through my grandmother's journals and the town records, piecing together the history of this house and my family. I discovered that the land had once belonged to a man named Jonathan Miller, one of the town's founders. He had been accused of witchcraft and executed in the late 1600s, cursing the land and all who lived on it with his dying breath. My ancestors had unknowingly built their home on this cursed ground, and the Watcher was the manifestation of that curse. Armed with this knowledge, I sought out for Evelyn once more. Together we devised a plan to lift the curse. It required a powerful ritual, one that would break the bond between the Watcher and my bloodline. It was risky, but it was the only hope that we had. We prepared everything in the basement of the old house, setting up an intricate array of symbols and candles. As night fell, we began the ritual. The air grew heavy, and the temperature dropped. The knocking started again, echoing through the house. The Watcher appeared, its form more solid than ever before. It howled in rage as we chanted words of this ritual, trying to break through the circle. The candles flickered wildly, and I felt a surge of energy building around us. With a final desperate chant, the circle of symbols glowed brightly, and a shockwave of energy burst through the center. The Watcher shrieked and dissolved into a cloud of darkness, which was sucked into the earth beneath the house. The air cleared, and the knocking stopped. For the first time, this house felt peaceful. The curse had been lifted. Evelyn and I stood up in silence, just for a moment, taking in what we had accomplished. "It's over," she said, her voice filled with relief. I nodded, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. "Thank you," I said, gratefully beyond words. As I left Miller's Crossing for the last time, I knew the Watcher was truly gone. The nightmare was over, and I could finally move on with my life. But I would never forget the terror that I had faced or the strength it took to overcome it. The past would always be a part of me, but now, at least, it wouldn't control my future. For now. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you liked that and you would like to see more, make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to the channel and you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe. I've got a lot of content, a lot more coming. And yes, in my outros, I do not edit them. I just let it keep on going. So if I mess up, you're gonna have to listen to it. I apologize. But make sure to check out the links in the description as well, like Twitter, Instagram, yada yada, everything like that, including my Gmail if you got a story that you would like to submit. I would definitely really like to do some subscriber stories. So make sure to also turn on those post notifications, because I always forget to tell you that. But here you go. But with that being said, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one.